Let's listen to this right-winger talk about how the IRS is really just a bunch of government agents. This has been the longest right-wing talking point that exists. Now, we do know certain things about the IRS. We know that as particularly the Republican Party, less so the Democratic Party, although there's probably been some instances where the Democrats have shortchanged the IRS. The more the IRS was defunded, the more they turned their enforcement apparatus to lower income people. Why? Because lower income people were suddenly became the low-hanging fruit. Instead of going for the biggest apple, they went for the ones that were easiest to pick because they didn't have, just to extend this horrible metaphor, they didn't have the money to buy ladders to go up and pick the big apples. So they just stayed on the ground and picked the low-hanging, smaller apples. That's what happened. That's a fact. You can see the graph for funding the IRS goes down like this. And the graph for auditing lower income people goes like this. And so the Democrats passed a bill in this most recent legislation that would increase funding for the IRS, much of which was to add 80,000 inspectors, although not all at one time. It's to replace a lot of people who are about to retire. So maintain, maybe slightly increase the number of agents who are going to be working, all good. The better the resources the IRS has, and understanding the scoring of their bills was to get more money out of the IRS. And the places where you're going to increase the revenue that comes in, it's the Internal Revenue Service, is going to be from wealthy people. But right-wingers will say stuff like this. I give you a host of, the fill-in host for Tucker Carlson, but Fox News guest, what's her name? Tulsi Gabbard.
You look at those numbers that you broke out and the messaging that's coming out of the Democrats in Congress saying, hey, this will only apply to the wealthy. We're only taxing the wealthy. Well, that's only 1% to 2% of all taxpayers. So why in the world do they need $80 billion and 87,000 new hires in order to go after 1% to 2%?
Pause it for 1 second. Pause it for 1 second. First of all, again, those 87,000 new hires are going to be over the next 10 years. For those of you who watch Fox on a regular basis, that comes out to about 8,700 new employees every year. Of course, not all these people are auditors. There's a lot of other services that go on. It's going to make your paying your taxes that much easier and getting your refunds quicker. But it's also going to be adding auditors to go after that 1% to 2% of all taxpayers who have all the money now. And then they have oceans of lawyers to prevent the IRS from finding the fact that they're not paying any taxes. That's where it's coming from. That's where, and she knows all this.
Do you know what, like, first of all, like, it's only 1% to 2% of all taxpayers. Like, that's still like millions of people.
Yes. I mean, it's millions of people and the wealthiest of people.
Yeah, with the best lawyers.
Of all taxpayers. So why in the world do they need $80 billion and 87,000 new hires in order to go after 1% to 2% of taxpayers? Their math absolutely does not add up, which should be frightening and concerning because this means exactly what you said. They're coming after us. They're coming after entrepreneurs. They're coming after small business owners. They're coming after our middle-class, hardworking Americans. There's no question about that. And then you layer on top of that what you just mentioned. Their criminal division with the power of enforcement of a gun, essentially, and how we have already seen, it's not a theory that the IRS has also, like many of these other federal agencies, abused their power to go after political opponents. We have seen them do this with Lois Lerner under the Obama administration. There were no consequences there, and she was directly targeting directly targeting blatantly conservative organizations. And so this dangerous trend that we are seeing that happened gradually over years, but everything from the IRS to Department of Homeland Security, their counterterrorism division, the FBI, the Department of Justice, we are seeing how they are more blatantly in broad daylight being weaponized to target political opponents of those in power and anyone who dares to dissent or question or challenge their actions and policies. This is government bureaucracy at its worst, rather than actually identifying the problem.
I mean, this is really like, I don't know how many times we can play a Tulsi Gabbard clip and be like, wow, she really is now a total right winger. First off, her problem with with taxation. This is like, I've had the libertarian candidate for president or, trying to win the primary. That guy, Darryl Perry, was most famously the one who hung up on me over that. But every libertarian who calls in talks about the monopoly of force and forcing me to pay my taxes at the barrel of a gun.
Right.
At the barrel of a gun. And then you want to talk about politicization. We know, we have evidence, testimony, eyewitnesses who talk about the politicization of the Department of Justice under the Bush administration. Talking about weaponizing and going after your political enemies under the Bush administration. The controversial firing of the U.S. attorneys who would not find fake stories of voter fraud, would not go after local politicians, fired because they didn't come up with enough. There's a book that just came out. We'll talk about it tomorrow about Trump doing this with the Department of Justice. The Lois Lerner story is a joke. Yeah. It's a joke. It's a joke. That's Benghazi level stuff. Worse than Benghazi, actually. There were a bunch of so-called 503Cs, I think it was, that conservatives were running that were arguing they weren't political at all, which is just absurd. Any type of enforcement from the IRS, you hear right-wingers scream. That's how you know they're really right-wingers. It's like literally like a litmus test.
It used to be, I guess. There's a certain type of anti-elitist who is also apparently saying that this is authoritarianism. You enforce taxes. That's authoritarianism.
Yeah, folks. Taxation is, you want to get... Taxation basically means one of two things to people. It really should mean both. One is you're taxing so that your government can spend things. I don't necessarily think that it's necessary for that, but certainly a lot of people do. And so when they talk about demonizing the IRS, what they're talking about is we don't want to provide government to provide support to people. The other is there is one mechanism that is better than any other mechanism if you want to deal with income inequality. If you want to get rid of an oligarchy and you are honest about that, the first mechanism that you should turn to is taxation. Confiscatory taxation, wealth taxes, making sure that wage taxes and taxes on making money from money have parity. That's the way you do it. Antitrust is also important in these things but taxation. And the reason why right-wingers attack taxation is because it will cripple government. They want the wealthy people, the 1% to 2%, to not get it. Now, yes, you don't have to believe the Treasury Secretary when they say no one under $400,000 is going to be audited, any more so than they have been already. This is geared towards getting where the money is. We heard that testimony from the head of the IRS. It's built into their deficit hawkery that this is going to raise more money, and that's where the money is. Anybody who's talking about this IRS stuff and attacking the IRS is a right-winger. Or at the very least, they're simply, I don't know what's in Tulsi Gabbard's heart. I don't even know if she has a heart. She, as far as I know, she could be an animatron. Doesn't matter. She's spouting the fundamental right-wing talking points. Grover Norquist. I mean, the lineage of people who have said everything she has just said is extraordinary. And not a single one of them, is a leftist.
Yeah. You can't simultaneously be anti-IRS and pro raising taxes on rich people and corporations. You can't do it.
No. Even if you're an idiot, which I know some of these people who espouse this are, you're not that dumb. You're just playing to, where you think you have an audience.
Reactionary dollar.
There you go.